Mom, I want a balloon. I want a balloon. You want a balloon? Oh, do you want the red one or the blue one or the one with the stars over there? I want the one that gives me internet. The one that costs tens of thousands of dollars. Oh, okay. Okay. Hey guys, I'm Vee Laabs. This is the Technophiles Newscast, and Project Loon has once again perfected the art of riding the wind on the edge of space. Project Loon is something we've talked about in the past, and it's super interesting. We've actually talked a little bit about it in the podcast episode 321, Jake's story about the digital divide. If you don't know, Project Loon is actually an old Google X project that brings internet via balloons to communities where they can't get the wired infrastructure done. The project was spearheaded by Mike Cassidy, a serial entrepreneur and an MIT graduate with a master's in aerospace engineering. During his time building satellites for different companies, he noted that it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 years to build the satellite and then another year to get the satellite into space. So you're setting up technology that's anywhere from 5 to 10 years old. That's not great, especially when it costs so much. He actually got pretty frustrated with that fact and went and joined Astro Teller's Google X program, where he started to have these ideas that led to Project Loon. So while he was there, he and his coworkers brainstormed this idea of delivering internet via a balloon. They weren't sure if it was going to work, and they just kind of wanted to see if they could eliminate that idea before they moved on to something else. So they took a router and a power source and stuck it in a styrofoam beer cooler and attached it to a big old balloon, sent it up to the stratosphere, and found out that it actually worked. So from there, they moved on from styrofoam beer coolers to aluminum rigs wrapped in mylar blankets to protect it from temperature and ultraviolet rays, and they actually swapped out the routers for LTE receivers. They're actually working together with telephone companies to get the signal down to areas that they weren't able to service before, and it actually cost them a fraction of the amount of just putting in new infrastructure. Like, compared to satellites, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build and then $100 million to launch because it's a rocket, it's going to space, it's going to cost money. And you compare all those millions of dollars to the tens of thousands of dollars it costs for each balloon to get to the destination where all your customers are, you save quite a bit of money, and you still get happy customers. The way these balloons get to those customers is that they float on the winds of the stratosphere. Each of the balloons has 2 layers of it. On the outside of it, it has a helium balloon that gives it its lift that allows it to rise to the stratosphere, and it has an inner balloon filled with normal air that gives it its weight. It acts kind of like the sandbags of a hot air balloon, where if it has more air in it, it's heavier and it will lower closer to the Earth, and if it has less air in it, it will go up higher. And it rides the layers of the winds of the stratosphere. There's actually multiple layers of wind currents going on up there. The way they ride those winds is that they get information from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They share their charts of how the winds are blowing in the stratosphere with Google, and Google combines that with all of their algorithms to kind of create a path they should take riding those winds from point A to point B. It works like a classic hot air balloon would. The hot air balloon can control its vertical movement, and then it just rides the wind to use the horizontal movement. Where a hot air balloon pilot would look at the weather that day and kind of chart out their trip for just one day, Google takes all of the information from the NOAA and can chart out a trip that lasts from 6 to 12 days. The movement of these Loon balloons are very similar to that one level of Pokemon Red and Blue underneath the arcade, where you have to ride on those little arrows in like a bunch of different loops to get to one spot. That's pretty much how they ride the stratosphere winds. Only less frustrating, because they have scientists helping. So with this algorithm, they had this idea that they would send rings and loops of Loon balloons around the world to give service to these different areas. And if there was some sort of weird mix-up and like a balloon had to come down or something, another balloon would be able to come in and take its place from another region. But they would constantly be moving around the globe, which causes these breaks in service, which isn't good for customers. Even though it was a great idea, it was still a little bit loosey-goosey of a plan for something that's dealing with the forces of nature and supposed to be delivering consistent service to its customers. They did manage to figure out how to keep the balloons evenly spaced apart so they had like even coding of signal in the regions they were delivering to. Actually, in 2014, they managed to launch from New Zealand, circumnavigate the globe, and then land within 10 kilometers of its destination in Australia. That's pretty rad for a balloon that doesn't have any like fans or propellers on it, just simply riding the wind on its own. It was able to do that. That's wild. Good job, algorithms. That's a smart little balloon right there. That's a real skillful balloon. Gosh, you're gonna get some good balloon treats when you come back home. So on another test about a year ago in Puerto Rico, they were sending balloons out from their launch point to whatever their testing area was. And they noticed, instead of making the loop as it normally would with a bunch of series of balloons going out and in and out and in, they noticed that some of the balloons were just starting to circle around that one testing area in Puerto Rico. And they stayed there for a good while. And they thought that was strange. And so they wanted to kind of incorporate that behavior into, I guess, their new maneuver ideas. So instead of telling the balloons to go from their starting point and loop and come back to it after giving their signal out or whatever, they just told a squad of balloons to go out to that testing site and just ride that wind in a circle around that region for as long as it could. And they did. And some of those balloons stayed out there for 30 days. So the folks at Loon thought, well, maybe instead of telling the balloons to go out and in and out and in, we'll just tell them to go out and then come in whenever they need to, like for battery reasons or whatever. And so in Peruvian airspace, they sent out a big squad of balloons to their location, and they stayed there, some of them, for up until 3 months. 3 months! 3 months of just staying in one area and riding that wind in a circle for as long as they could. It's amazing that just even in like a small area, if they're just trying to reach a few towns, they can find that loop of air in the stratosphere for it to ride and know how to keep in that area for that long. They were basically doing aerial jazz squares in the stratosphere for 3 months. Just doing jazz squares for 3 months in the stratosphere. Looking good while doing it. And that's just another reason why Project Loon is one of the few Google X projects that survived that alphabet shift and didn't get chopped for the sake of budget. They're still innovating after all this time. They're still figuring out, they're still doing good things, and I'm really excited to see what they come up with next. So yeah, you definitely want to keep your eye out on Project Loon, see what they're coming up with next. And if you're curious, they're doing really good work out there. And if you want to learn more about the problems they're helping solve right now, we talked about it on a podcast, episode 321. Go check that out. Jake brings some really interesting information about the digital divide in America and around the world. Really thought-provoking stuff. You should go listen to it. If you want to talk to us about it, you can tweet us at Technophiles Pod. You can also check us out on Facebook if you search Technophiles Podcast. You can also check out our website, technophilespodcast.com. Yeah, I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, thanks for watching today. If you liked what you saw today, we have more newscasts over here. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of science and technology, we also have long-form stuff over here in our Technophiles podcast. You can also subscribe and get this stuff every week. Why are jazz squares so exhausting? I'm so out of shape.